Hi, this is the Social Jello with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Jello with Angelo show. Hey, what's up? Thanks for checking out Social Jello with Angelo. Today I interviewed John Hojlo as part of my Kajukenbo series and MMA series where we talk about mixed martial arts, and traditional martial arts. And I really hope you enjoy the discussion, and stay tuned for after the episode is done to catch up with some latest Social Jello news. Without further ado, let's get started with the show. So today we're going to talk about the value of martial arts. Does money equal out better training? What qualifies as good training? And that's why I asked you to be on the show. So without further ado, you don't have to have the perfect answer. This is just a starting point. But what do you think about that?
I think the value, when it comes to money, first off, the amount of money that a coach or a martial arts instructor or a fighter is making, that money has no connection to their skill. Coaches in martial arts, they should be making more money than they do. I recently read an article from a BJJ guy who just basically, it sounded like he quit. He just said, fuck this. The students don't care about the work we do. We should be getting paid more money. But the fact of the matter is, how much money you make as a fighter or martial artist is completely based on your business acumen. It has nothing to do with your skill. There are good and bad people who are skilled at business. And there are great people who offer a valuable product but do not charge a lot of money for that. I got to tell you about a little bit about my instructor, Ron Esteller, when you mentioned this. And other people will echo me in this. And I got to tell you a little bit about my story as well. I listened to your last podcast with your instructor, Mr. Isawire. You mentioned at one point he was teaching $5 for a lesson or something like that, right?
Yeah, he said that when he asked when I asked him how much he was paying, he said that his dad didn't want to spend too much money on training. He was kind of, first generation immigrant coming over here. So they were trying to save money all the time. And if Kajukenbo was expensive, he would have never been able to do it. So yeah, it was like $5 a lesson.
Yeah, see, now that's awesome. Because a lot of the people who need martial arts cannot afford martial arts. Part of my story, that I started at a McDojo. I was 9 years old, and I will talk nonstop shit about McDojos, and I apologize if I get carried away. It pisses me off. But the thing is, my parents didn't know better. I didn't know better. I was a 9-year-old kid. We do this funny thing as human beings. The first part is natural and cool. The second part is where it goes weird. Is the more valuable something is, the more money we charge for it. And that makes sense. Valuable pieces, it costs more to make, you get more money. Doctors study for years, so we give them lots of money, in America at least. But the problem is that business people know that, so they will take a cheap product, charge lots of cash for it, and that tricks us into thinking it's worth something when it's not. In martial arts, you see that with the McDojos. They charge mad cash to people who don't know better, and they get the money. Because people think, well, they charge more, it's worth more. Even outside of martial arts, do you know much about the De Beers company, Diamonds?
De Beers and Diamonds. I know a few different things, but where are we going with that?
Well, basically, Adam Ruins Everything is a great summary of De Beers company. Basically, this is not martial arts, but it's the same idea. They take these pieces of rock that are valueless. Diamonds are not worth anything. But for almost 100 years now, they've been advertising to us that they are. And now we believe diamonds are worth mad cash. Every engagement rule, the guy has to ask the woman out. To ask the woman to get married, has to give her a diamond ring that's worth 3 times his monthly salary, and then he has to get another ring for the wedding. all of those rules were created by the De Beers company, and that tricks us. The rock is actually valueless, but because of good business skill, we now pass over mad cash for diamonds. And McDojos work the same way. People don't know better. They see advertisements. They don't know what a good real martial art is, and so they give a lot of cash to it. When I went to this McDojo, again, my parents didn't know better. The instructor that was there, this guy named Anthony Marks, this is a bit of my story. He was a badass. He is a badass, and I love this guy, but he was not a product of this McDojo. He was kind of passing through and working there. About a year after I got there, they kicked him out. They didn't like him. And then I started getting teacher after teacher of years after years. Some were good, some were bad. None of them taught me how to fight. There was absolutely no value in the martial art that I was getting from them, but my family was paying them money. So, and I got to tell you the story, because this is all leads back into value as well. 12 years old, I'm given a black belt. Can't fight for shit. A couple years later, I'm assistant teaching regularly. Can't fight for shit, but I loved teaching. I loved working with kids and adults and giving them some knowledge. So eventually I become the head instructor. You know, by the time I'm 16, I'm the head instructor at this school. Now, if I were looking for a school, I don't know how I'd feel about a 16-year-old teaching all the classes. At the time, I was all they had. And I knew that the value was little. Eventually, one teacher came through. Another wanderer came by, and he taught me Olympic-style Taekwondo. And this was the introduction to value at all. Say what you will about Taekwondo. Olympic-style was my introduction to actually trying to hit somebody and someone actually trying to hit me hard. That was my first bit of value there. I remember working with a special needs kid at our McDojo, and I taught him how to fight. I taught him Olympic style, and he started sweeping the floor with all the other kids. Finally, there was some value there. So as an instructor there, I had to find more value to make up for the money we were charging people. I had a friend who went to Chinatown and took Wing Chun lessons once a month. He taught me some Wing Chun. I taught him some Olympic-style Taekwondo. I had a friend from high school named Eddie Harris, who was the polar opposite of me. I was antisocial. He knew everybody. But we connected with martial arts. And he got back into it. He found this place called Brewer's Karate. He started teaching me some jiu-jitsu. I taught him some wushu. And then we ran into a problem with his McDojo. The schools were shutting down. This chain martial art went from 12 schools down to 4. And now they didn't have the money. They didn't want to pay to support this place. So I had to find a new school to go to. Now, this can be good and bad. I could find a place with value. I could find a place that actually teach me some shit. And I had to look around. Eventually, it came down to 2 schools. My friend Eddie was going to Brewers, so I had to look at this place. The guy was a world champion in some tournaments. And another guy I was working with at this dojo, his name was Mike Val, he told me about this guy named Ron Esteller doing Kajukenbo. I don't know what Kajukenbo was. And I had to choose. And at that point, Mike Val tells me, by the way, whichever school you end up choosing, you should know a lot of our students are going to follow you. Great, no pressure. So I wanted to find a good school. I went to Brewer's Karate, and it was good. There was some value there. And then I went to Ron Esteller's class, and it blew me away. They were hitting hard. They were doing jiu-jitsu. They were doing kung fu forms that were 400 years old. And it felt real. This was the first time I took a class that did not feel like a McDojo. It didn't feel like he was out for the money, and I was signed up here. Now, this is where the value comes in, because I love my instructor, Ron Esteller, but he was a shitty businessman. He was really bad, and that's
you do know he's going to hear this later, right?
I know, and I mean, but the thing is, that's probably why I loved him, and I still do love him for that. He is so much. I mean, he introduced so much to me. And I mean, the thing is, here's where we talk about the value. He was charging. You're going to Gracie Barra these days, right? Can I ask how much they're charging?
Oh, yeah. They charge a lot, man. They charge a lot. They charge about $100 a month, and
Okay.
that's with limited days, right? Like, I pay. I think I picked the 80 to. It's somewhere between 80 or 100 a month.
Okay.
And that allows me to come for 8 lessons a month. I can't come every day. And I
Okay.
mean, and give in, I don't have time to come every day. But that's just like, if you want to come anytime, I think that price is 100. US would be about $100 a month or $120 a month. Allows you to come anytime, not any day, but according to their operating hours. I picked the lower
Okay.
end, so that to
Yeah.
kind of explain, yeah, to give an
Yeah.
explanation, and
And I
then
think that's normal.
to kind of go, yeah, that is the kind of, it's pretty normal. What's not normal is the place that my student is going to, because he asked me the same thing, because I can't. For those of you listening, I do train people in MMA, but I also train people that don't live in my town. I go all the way to Kobe, which is about 2 hours. It's a different city limit. If you're in America, it would be like saying that I was teaching classes in San Diego and Los Angeles and driving between the two. So I do that. I go every Sunday. I go out there and train people in a different city. And one of my students out there wanted to train more every day. He tries to come out, but it's tough. It's expensive to come out even by train. So I recommended to him to go to a jiu-jitsu school. And he's like, well, I want to go to Gracie Barra, like you. And I'm like, I go there because that's the closest place to me that fits my schedule. That's it. That's the only reason I go there. Anywhere else, there's just nowhere else. That's why I chose it. It was the only reputable school near me that I
Yeah.
can get to. You live in the city. There's more places. Look around. And he found a different place that has that's more traditionally based. It's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but it's ran by a guy who is Japanese, who it's a little more on the Japanese. If you listen to the podcast, the difference between Japanese jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, he goes to more of the traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. It's Brazilian jiu-jitsu from a Japanese perspective, and that's really hard
Okay.
to describe. I go into it a little bit on that podcast I did about the history of jiu-jitsu and the differences between the Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools that are ran from a Japanese perspective that have mostly Japanese people there, not a lot of Brazilians. But I recommended one of
Yeah.
those places because it was only $30 a month, and he can come anytime, and it's like 7 days a week. So that's why he ended up going there. But that kind of gives you a
See, that's
rundown of
great.
what kind of stuff is out there in the price range. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly, man. And like, and you said like $100, and he's doing 30. $30 is great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is.
what I remember back in the States as well, man, I saw some places charging more than that. You know, I saw some places, $200 a month to come in regularly. I also heard about someone teaching for $30, and immediately as well, people were kind of suspicious. Like, $30, that's it? Are you sure he's teaching something real? And then here I am with my instructor, Ron Esteller. He was teaching for. This was I came to him in 1999. And he was charging $65 a month to come in regularly. This was access to high-level instructors. This was access to his instructor, who's also teaching there. Over the years, he had to raise the price. Went up to like 75, 85, and eventually up like to 100. And he hated that. He absolutely hated having to do that. But keep in mind, like on top of that, he was not raised with a silver spoon in hand. So he knew what a tough childhood was like. So on top of $65 a month, he was offering scholarship programs to kids with single parents. Now, at the same time, but before he even had the school, he was teaching for free for 20 years at the Boys Club. But when he had the school, police officers were training for free. They would be able to come in, so we'd have a regular Kajukenbo class, and we'd end with some extra gun retention, CQC stuff. This was a lot of value and very little money. My teacher has always been an example to me of the value of the art more than the money. You cannot let yourself be tricked by high prices.
So just to clarify, you're telling me that there was, on top of the fact that you had the Kajukenbo program, different instructors, police officers were coming in and also teaching self-defense and awareness classes. Is that?
Well, the police officers were taking the classes.
Oh, okay.
They were training for
With
free.
you. Oh, okay.
You know,
Okay.
Yeah. Police officers, they train for free. as far as self-defense stuff like that police might need, Ron also teaches at middle schools for free. I mean, that's the stuff he's working there.
All right. So just to clarify,
he does have a.
Just to clarify, so Ron was training police officers. That's what I'm trying to get at. Just to.
Yeah. He was training police officers.
Okay. Cool.
But we do also have a guy who's Kajukenbo has Danzanryu Jujutsu. We got a 7th degree Danzanryu Jujutsu black belt who is a police officer who also does come down to teach. That is also part of the program. Michael Mayday McDonald.
The McDonald sounds familiar, but I can't put a finger on it.
He was UFC. He was one of the champions of UFC for a little bit.
Okay.
Well, he's married to Ron Steller's daughter, so
that's why
he was
I saw his fight. I saw one of his recent fights because it was posted on Facebook. Either way, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah. And I also saw I saw an article about he hurt his hand. He got an injury, right? Yeah.
So he's taking a break from that for a while. I think he was talking about retirement recently, but I mean he's been coming down to Ron School as well. So you're getting access to people like this for really low prices. The money does not matter. And I gotta highlight, because Ambo's a refugee. I came to him from another school. He picks up a lot of refugees. I know that he's a valuable martial artist because there was a school down the road, I'm not going to mention any names. A lot of their students came to him because they were not getting anything from their McDojo. They came to him because they were learning how to fight there. They were learning forms in a way that actually helped them to fight. And this other school was making mad cash. They were getting lots of students and charging 2 or 3 times as much because people think, a higher price, it must be more valuable. And that's not always true.
Yeah. How do you, and that we say people, and I love to bring in the element of us living in Japan. How do you think Japanese society views that same concept? The idea, do you feel that Japanese people carry that same concept of the more you pay for something, the better it is?
I think so. Japan is much more traditional, much more thoughtful, much more polite. They love to, some listeners might not know, but like when Japanese people give you a gift of money, for example, it's typical to take half that money and buy a gift to give back.
Yeah.
They really care about that value of money in that. And in martial arts, it's weird because on one hand, I think they work hard they think you should be giving more money for something. But at the same time, they're really forgiving of martial artists if in America, my boyfriend teaches martial arts, well, he must not make much money. In Japan, he teaches judo. Oh, wow, that's great. That's amazing. This is part of Japanese culture. So at the same time, the money isn't even considered. It's you're part of this culture. That is way more important than any money you might be getting for it. So I guess the answer to your question, the money is important, but at the same time, they have a really big separation when it comes to Japanese culture.
Yeah. I hate answering my own question, but I recently opened my program, and when I opened my program, my wife said it's going to be free, because that's what I said. I already have my business. I hate to use the word successful, but I'm well off, we'll say. And so when I started the Kajukenbo program, I said, you can let our parents know, some of the parents from my English school, that I'm teaching Kajukenbo if they want to bring their kids. I already have some of the parents. And I wasn't charging them anything. I was just saying, you know what? I need to start doing it so I don't get rusty as a Kajukenbo instructor, because I'm coaching mostly MMA and kickboxing. And I got that one student, but I only see him once a week. And I'm like, I kind of want to get something going here. And I had someone approach me. Yoshi asked me. Yoshi-san is actually the one who asked me, can you teach me Kajukenbo? And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's do that. And he's already one of my English students. His kids are. So I was like, you know what? You're already paying me money to teach your kid English. I feel bad asking you for more money.
Yeah.
You already give me money. So as far as money's concerned, you're good. Let's just come in and train and get it done. So then my wife told the rest of the students, now that we're building the new facility, And we just had our first kids class last week with everyone. Like finally, she's telling everyone now. It's not just an agreement between me and Yoshi and a few other parents. She told everybody. So a bunch of kids came out,
Nice.
and before they came out, they all said, "Well, how much is it going to cost?" And she's like, "Well, Angelo said it's free because you guys are his English students." And they said, "No, we can't do that. How much does it cost? You can't." And like after the class was over, like, "You can't do this for free. Like that was a great class. Like how could you do that?" And we were just thinking like, well, how could I was thinking the opposite. Like how could I do that? Right? You're already giving me money. Why am I asking for more? But yeah, they were really open. Like not only they were like shocked that I was even thinking to do it for free, and now we have to come up with like a pricing system. So I was like, all right, we came up with a really cheap arrangement. Like, you know what? You come in for one lesson. It's $5 per lesson. If you sign up, we'll do $30 a month. How's that? Because I feel that since I'm teaching 2 classes a month, if you look at it at the value by the end of the month, and the personal training aspect that they can come to the gym and work out. If you keep coming into all the classes I have available, you start coming in every day. You're gonna spend more each time you give me 500 yen for like personal training, and I'm training 6 days a week. It's gonna be more than $30. It's gonna get way more expensive. So I was like, if you start coming here a lot, just give me $30 max, and we'll call it a day. Like whichever is cheapest, either $5 each time, or once you go over 3,000 yen, don't give me more money than that. I don't want it. But man. It was pretty cool.
That's great. One of my favorite terms is dojo rat. I've heard this term used for. It's a loving term, endearing term meant for kids who just will not leave the dojo. And the thing is because they love it there. They're happy. You get this with adults as well, but especially with kids. And it's great to see because this is where the value of martial arts comes in. You're giving these kids something that they might not have otherwise. And especially the ones who cannot afford anything. You're giving them a circle. You're giving them a new family to connect with and a future. And that is, again, coming back to value, this is some more valuable that money cannot really measure.
Yeah, man, definitely. Like, there's a lot of value to that. And I think when I originally asked you the question, I kind of wanted to get at this idea of right now people seem to value MMA training, right? Quote unquote branded MMA training. Going back to. I went all the way to China and I met with Ramsey Dewey. Going a little back to your story about Taekwondo, actually, and I've felt this before, and even my Sifu said it. He said there's Taekwondo, there's real Taekwondo, and then there's what everybody else is doing around this area. If you ever meet a guy who does Taekwondo from Korea or Japan or does Taekwondo in the East Coast, those people are doing real Taekwondo. And
that's it.
And he also talked about the difference between someone who is doing Taekwondo just to have the McDojo and this idea of some people that and pretty much he was trying, in a long-winded speech, he was trying to let me know that if I'm at a tournament, to not underestimate all Taekwondo guys, because that's a mistake. Some of them really do know what they're doing, and if you underestimate them, you're gonna end up getting knocked out by a hook kick, and you're not gonna see it coming. So be careful. And Ramsey Dewey was one of those guys. But kind of going back to the branding of MMA, like Ramsey Dewey doesn't exactly lead foot first with, "Hey, I used to do Taekwondo," or "I did Taekwondo," and I saw it in his lessons when we were doing our stuff. He was like, "Okay, we're gonna do some spinning hook kicks." That's the Taekwondo. That's the Taekwondo background. I can see that. And I'm like, but it's all good. I mean, we used to cross train with other real Taekwondo guys. There's some value to that, and he would talk about that. But still, like, because of marketing and branding, he doesn't exactly advertise that. He doesn't advertise himself as a Taekwondo. He has done MMA for a long time, and he advertises himself marketing wise as an MMA coach, which he is. I'm not knocking the way he does things. We're just going back to that idea of marketing, right? That idea of how do you market? And you were talking about how Mr. Ron Esteller is that professor? Is that grandmaster? What is that?
Grandmaster.
Okay, just
gotta be careful, right?
That's where we're going with this. So
I call him Sifu, but
yeah, he's not my Sifu, so I definitely can't get away with that. I can get away with that with my Sifu, who is a professor, but I can't get away with your Sifu. But yeah, so Grandmaster Esteller, as you were saying, as far as the business side, was more focused on the work at hand, which is a story that I've actually been hearing. I've been listening to a lot of MMA podcasts, jiu-jitsu podcasts, And I'm noticing even in those other styles, the same trend between these people that are more focused on the work at hand. And when they're asked questions such as, well, how much money do you make per UFC fight? And they were just like, I really don't. I really don't take care of that. Someone else takes care of that. Well, how? So do you know what percentage wise? And they're like, well, to be honest, again, that's not my field. I go in there, I train the person, and then their manager talks to my front desk person, and they iron that out themselves, right? And then there's the people that are like, oh, well, 20%, right? Because they're more about the money, right? So kind of going back to this idea of the difference between someone who's getting in this for the value of as an MMA fighter, or the person who's doing this for the value of martial arts. Like, how do you differentiate these two things?
Again, we talked about this before. Anytime I start with that, I got to be careful. MMA is great, so don't take anything I say the wrong way. More people should do MMA. If you do karate or jiu-jitsu or aikido, you should do some MMA training first off, the kickboxing and otherwise. Also, keep in mind that there are martial artists who do very well in MMA. One of the first names I always mention is Chuck Liddell. He is a Kajukenbo black belt. I mentioned Michael McDonald. My understanding is he didn't do too much of the martial arts per se, but he trained at the Last Stand, which is run by a Kajukenbo black belt professor. The thing about value when it comes to martial arts, it's hard to really measure with fighters and MMA guys both, because the value of anything is based on how well it does what it's supposed to do. So the value of the tequila that you and I drink is based on the flavor. I think I just heard half of my friends gagging as I said that. They don't like tequila as much as you and I do. But if if I just really wanted to get drunk, I would not be buying tequila. I'd be buying spiritus, like 98% Polish vodka. That's a different type of value. And I just heard the other half of my friends gagging as I said that. The value of a firefighter, how good are you at rescuing people? The value of a comedian, how good are you at making people laugh? With martial artists and fighters, it becomes an issue to discuss this, because as a martial artist, the value is in first being a fighter and then having the art as well. There is nothing wrong with just being a fighter. There are people who do that. I talk a lot about Aperture, Fight Focus on Facebook. They got some great videos and stuff. And a while back, they put up an interview for some guy, I forget his name, but this guy had studied all these martial arts over the years, and he said he did not want to be called a martial artist anymore. He was just a military trainer. That's it. And he didn't care about the art part, and that's fine. That's your own issue to work on that. The problem with martial arts, and the reason a lot of MMA guys will talk shit about martial arts, is because there are people who put the value on the art first, and that's a problem. That's how we end up with the no-touch masters that are total bullshit. They forget that the roots of martial arts were to kill people in war. Luckily, we don't do that so much anymore. Nowadays we don't. Most of us don't live in societies where we have to fight every day. Some of us do, and martial arts has its reasons. But if you just want to learn how to kill people, just go to the military. They'll teach you much more quickly, much more effectively, and you'll be legally allowed to do it. That's a whole nother debate to get into. But the thing is, martial artists do have that core of fighting first, of war. You learn how to hurt people so that you can avoid hurting them. You learn about injury so that you can avoid injury and heal. You learn about death so that you can enjoy your life. The core of martial art is fighting, and you have to be a fighter first. If you put your value in the art, you no longer have value as a martial artist, because you need to have that fighting bit first. So the value of a fighter, it's kind of hard to really measure, because winning conditions of a fight are always going to change. At a competition, at a tournament, or MMA fight, whatever, it's pretty simple. Follow these rules and get more points or knock them out or choke them out first. That's it. But in real life, it's not. The conditions of winning are simple. In a situation where it's you and two guys with knives, it's not get more points. So you knock them both out, and if you get stabbed, you still lose the fight. The conditions change. If you're a police officer in a hostage situation, the conditions to win are different. I mean, it would be nice to shoot the motherfuckers who are ruining your day, but your winning conditions become get the hostage out alive and get home to see your family, let them take care of this guy. So, yeah, fighters, as a martial artist, the fight has to come first. But how do you get the value of a fighter? It's not just winning matches. It's something much deeper than that. And the martial artist tries to balance both of those. You got to be able to fight realistically. You can't rely on bullshito. But at the same time, you got to be something different. People should know you're different without even knowing you're a martial artist. I say that all the time. You should have the fight in your heart to physically withstand blows and roll with somebody. Even if you're regularly losing, you should be able to give them a fight regularly. And at the same time, you need to be able to take your skills and do something with it. Either in teaching people what you know, or in fighting, or in taking the skills you develop in becoming a fighter and using those skills to make the world better around you, at your workplace or at home with your family. That's where the value of a martial artist comes in and separates them from a fighter. And again, fighters have their own thing. Some fighters would say, I'm not a martial artist, but I would consider them a martial artist. People say boxers are not martial artists. I consider boxers martial artists.
Yeah,
they put a lot of study and skill in what they're doing. Yeah, man, it is an art. It's the sweet science, man. And so taking that term, I mean, be careful with how you listen to what I'm saying, but the martial artist should be different than someone who just goes out and swings and rolls and chokes people out. There is a huge difference. You is what makes stand out from other people.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I think it's interesting how you say about, again, it's what you do with what you learned, right? I was watching a video that was on the Kajukenbo Facebook page, and they shared a video, and, I'm realizing I'm horrible with names, and it makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about, and I really wish I remembered people's names more, because, like, people are always doing this to me, like, yesterday I met, I'm going to do this again, right? I'm going to go into a story about how I saw a grandmaster of Kajukenbo say a great quote. Long story short, I'm going to edit this shit out because I know that was bad. But either way, when I was looking at the at the professor, he was saying that he was a doctor. And he was talking about how a lot of people do Kajukenbo and they want to become better fighters or better martial artists. And he felt that if he can't teach his students to be able to live a happy life outside of the dojo, then he didn't teach his students anything. In his opinion.
That's a great quote.
Like,
that is awesome.
That's what he felt. And I wish I could remember who it was, but but either way. I think that's
man, I totally agree.
Yeah, I think that kind of summed up this concept that people have of how they place value on the fighting end. And yes, having value on the fighting end is really good. But what I want to say, the difference between just a coach, not a good coach, the difference between like a life coach, I would say, and just a regular sports coach who's there to get you to a directed goal, is that someone who sees themselves as a coach in and off the mat is looking at the people they teach and how they're going to help them outside, not just on the mat, but outside of the mat, how they're going to help them. I know good wrestling coaches that when they're talking to their wrestlers, especially wrestling, right? Because wrestling doesn't have a lot of money. So they push these kids all high school, all throughout high school to win. And then at the end of it, they say, hey, okay, it's time to go to college. And it's time to get good scores so you can get into a good school. And the wrestlers are like, well, what are we talking about? Like, well, yeah, wrestling's great and all, but like, you need to get life is coming.
More, yeah. Everything outside of the ring, outside of the gym, outside of the dojo, that's where it's really going to matter. I hesitate when people talk about hobbies. I hesitate to consider Kajukenbo a hobby to me because it's a life practice. It's something much deeper. I would also make the comparison fighting in martial arts. Teaching someone how to fight is like teaching someone how to use a gun. And we can get into debate that those situations. But teaching martial arts, first off, should be teaching them how to use a gun, but then also teaching them gun safety and teaching them the history of guns and having some philosophy on why not to use guns until you reach a point where you can defend yourself with a gun if you need to, but you actually don't want to anymore, especially when you get older. That's the huge difference between martial arts and just teaching people how to hit and choke people out.
Yeah, that's what I would take out of it. So, like,
yeah.
I guess before we wrap things up, the main points that we were trying to cover today was this whole concept of value in martial arts. Does the money equal what you're supposed to pay? Or another thing I wanted to mention was not just money, does the name, right? You have these really big name coaches right now in martial arts, and some people feel that they have to go to this big name coach because the value is with this big name coach. And I'm not trying to name anybody name. I'm just saying, like, maybe you can just grab your average popular martial arts instructor on YouTube who's got 1 million views on his stuff, and people are crowding into his school or his or her school to learn something from them, and they feel that that's where the value is because of social capital, if you will. So I guess as a closing statement, and this is something I asked my Sifu, but I mean it's always good to get different instructors, advice. What advice do you have for someone who's looking to get into martial arts and is trying to kind of balance all these questions out before they choose a place?
I would say I just did an interview myself with one of my friends, Mickey Lopez. He brought up a good point. Learn from everywhere. Life is your dojo. Learn from everyone, from everything you can. Don't just learn from one instructor. Despite whatever image you have, you don't have to stick with one teacher forever. Especially when you're just starting. Walk around, talk to different people, learn from different instructors. Another one of my friends mentioned a good point that when you find some advice that works from somebody, you're going to use it. When you find another instructor give you that same advice, you start to see which instructors are good, and you start to see which instructors are not good. And then when you really connect with somebody, it's like becoming a family. You really feel a bond with the instructor. This guy is good. This guy or this lady, this woman is teaching me some good stuff. Then you really know who you'll want to be your instructor, who you will consider your teacher. You will naturally gravitate towards those people. Don't feel right away that your first instructor has to be your last instructor. Learn. There's no law that says you can't go. Kajukenbo should be about one instructor, and then you go out and learn from another instructor, learn from another, and then come back and bring it to your school, and then go out and find another instructor. It's not so rigid. And don't, that would be the advice, is don't get stuck where you're at. Go out and learn what you can, and don't feel you have to do things a certain way.
Cool. That's some good advice. All right. Well, if you're listening, that's the wrap-up music. So, John, thanks for being on the show today. Definitely
thanks for having me.
For some more training. For my listeners, stay tuned for the wrap-up. Projects. Right now, I'm working on a new series called Jello's Laugh Lounge, where I do some comic bits that I've been working on. As some of you may know, I live out in the middle of nowhere, so as much as I would like to do stand-up, I don't have an audience that I'd be able to do that with, because I live in Japan, and I'm in the rice field. I guess I could do stand-up in a rice field in English. No one would understand what I'm talking about. That's why I don't do it. I make these videos. I love making YouTube videos. It's fun. It's my hobby. I hope you enjoy it too. If you do, just hit subscribe on this channel and you'll have access to not just the Social Jello podcast, but you'll also have access to the Jello's Laugh Lounge that I recently created, as well as my Kajukenbo series. If you're, for some reason, like me and you live in the middle of nowhere and you need something to kind of practice with, I actually share a lot of parts of my Kajukenbo program right here on my YouTube channel. You can watch it and learn some basic stuff like how to stretch properly, and how to throw a punch and kick and line basics and stuff. Either way, I'll catch you all later. Thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned till next time. Later.
I just wanna be an anti-racist fucking